Nest Fund FM100 TalkBack Show. Your input matters. Call now on 323-3777 or 323-3999.
On the Nest Fund FM100 TalkBack Show, it is good to be back this morning. And once again, big thanks to Josu Kim for ensuring that the show's been running. And again, great job with the discussion with the PNG Forest Authority. As such, good morning to you and those joining us via our Facebook page as well. Morning through to you, Blogata. So good to be back as such. My special guest this morning, all the way from East Sepik Province, just flew in yesterday and has made time for us, is none other than the good governor for East Sepik Province, the Honourable Allan Bird, joins me this morning, a good friend of ours on TalkBack. Governor, good morning through now. Once again, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Callaghan, and morning to the listeners around the country.
Governor, we've got the upcoming budget that will be tabled on the 26th, or well, pretty much on 26th is when it comes to light. Now, very recently, you've made some posts on your page, in particular with a certain graph that was published by the National Statistical Office in terms of the GDP growth rate, the GDP rates that have been happening. Now, from what you've put out, there's been they've talked about the nominal growth rate of GDP of being 110.6 billion kina as of 2023, whilst the real GDP, which pretty much, as you pointed out in your statement, which says about the actual buying power of our people, is actually 69 billion kina, a massive 40 billion kina gap in this case. You brought a copy of that. For people who don't actually realize that, how do we translate that to the everyday Papua New Guinean? What does this graph actually mean?
Well, this graph measures the economic performance of the country. That's what it does. Okay, but then it's interesting because what they try to do is they try to measure prices that I guess increase with inflation and devaluation and all those kinds of things.
Yes. And
then the other measure is what they're calling the constant price GDP. That's the real measure of how the economy is doing. So you got nominal GDP. This is the nominal GDP that the government keeps talking about, and Prime Minister James Marape keeps talking about growing the economy to 200 billion kina. Actually, you can grow the economy to 200 billion kina tomorrow just by devaluing the kina. You devalue the kina and suddenly you have a 200 billion kina economy. So inflation and devaluation will actually lead to a bigger number in terms of your nominal GDP. And that's what they've been measuring. But the real GDP, actually, that measures the actual performance, what people are actually feeling. And if you look at the graph that was published by NSO, it shows that it's quite stagnant. Since Somare until now, it's hardly grown. It's just kind of stayed stagnant, maybe small increases over the period. So our people out in the provinces and everybody else, including the city, they're feeling the pinch of this. They're seeing it in the prices. You see, nominal GDP actually measures the increase in prices, a change in value. So when you say, oh, look, the country is doing really well because we've got 110 billion kina economy, I think, the number for this year is 120 billion. Yes, that number is going up. But the real number is actually staying constant, you see. So you're losing value over time. I've argued about that on the floor of Parliament. I've actually stopped the Prime Minister several times to try to correct him, because what he is saying is not what's actually happening in the economy. And the other thing also is that there's been a lot of borrowing by the government, and they've been printing money. So that borrowing is actually reflected in the nominal GDP. They're borrowing money and putting it into the economy, and it's increasing the number. So it looks good on paper.
Yep.
So, but the actual reality tells a different story, and that's what these graphs were all about. And like for me, I've been looking for this graph for the last 5 or 6 years. I've been trying to find these numbers. So I'm very happy that the National Statistical Office released them to the public. And they published it in the newspaper for the first time. So for people like me, you now have it in graphic form,
Public record.
Public record, it's there. And so they might say, oh, look, the headline is NSO reports a 3% GDP growth rate in 2023. But if you look at the graph, and economists will look at this graph and say, yeah, okay, you got a 3% growth, but you've actually got a massive decrease in real economic activity that's measured by, your real GDP. And it's right there. And for the people out there like looking in, you can see the graph, and you can see the blue line on top, and this is published by NSO. That's the GDP number that Marape keeps talking about, is the blue one on top. You can see the orange line at the bottom. That shows the reality that you are feeling in your pocket right now. It's right there. So, I want to thank NSO for this, and I think it's important that, and the good thing is with that simple picture, it tells the biggest story that all of us have been kind of arguing over for the last 3 or 4 years. That's it right there.
That huge gap in between that. What exactly is that, the gap?
Well, you see, you have to go back to see where the lines join up.
Yep.
This line joins up, funny enough, when Grand Chief Sir Michael was the Prime Minister. And what he actually did was real economic growth. And that was when they brought the PNG LNG in. The PNG LNG was a significant investment because it brought real economic growth on the ground. So when it did, you'll find that real GDP actually matched nominal GDP. So the lines actually joined when Somare was the Prime Minister. After that, you started to get the gap, and that reflects all of the borrowing. It reflects the printing of money. So it reflects the devaluation of the kina. It reflects the inflation. All of that is actually demonstrated there in this graph. That's what it means.
So coming back to someone who actually summarized what your statement wrote, said that if you were to look at it, 110 billion kina is what they're talking about nominal GDP. But the actual real GDP is 69 billion kina. And talking about a 40 billion kina gap. And he put this into perspective, saying that, okay, suppose you only 100 kina. 100 kina, past time at the beginning when time was Somare, 100 kina will get you 100 kina worth of goods. Now, with this current graph that we see, your 100 kina can only get you 64 kina worth of goods. I kind of feel that when I go to the shops.
No, I think everybody is feeling that, and this is the thing. You remember when I brought the rice and the tin fish and the biscuits and.
Go to Parliament?
Yeah, lo time lo. Because I think a lot of members of Parliament, they don't even understand this thing. There's inflation. You might as well talk about heaven. It's a completely different. So I brought it in to say, look, you want to see, and in fact, when I was in Parliament, I spoke about a 40% increase in prices. And that's the thing. That increase in price is actually reflected in the nominal GDP. The nominal GDP